our good from the regional IOM. We know Max very well. And this is, I should have introduced Titi yesterday, who's been our question master, and she's an IHRB research fellow and an expert in the region. And we also have Samiho Dumas, who's the Senior Director for Sustainability and Social Impact for Thai Union. And finally, Mr. Saxon Roya Puram from the Sati Foundation. Max, over to you.
Thank you, Neil, and very good morning, everyone. I hope we are audible. Okay, so that's great. My name is Max Potler, and I work with the IOM office here at the country office in Thailand, where I lead the team that looks after labor mobility and social inclusion. And we also oversee a regional program that we call Migration, Business and Human Rights in Asia, which for IOM is a program that has most of the intersection with what we call the work with the private sector, including the work on responsible, ethical, fair recruitment in global supply chain. Migration, Business and Human Rights in Asia, or MBHR, is a program that is regional. It's implemented in 7 countries, including in Thailand, and it runs for the next 4.5 years. Today's session, and we were very grateful for the organizers to be able to put this topic on the agenda, since it takes place in Bangkok and in Thailand. I think it's very important for us to have only 1 hour to cover this topic. I think we could fill basically the whole morning with this topic. It's very complex, it's very rich in its nuances and the challenges that we are aiming to describe. So Neil, I'm a little bit nervous about your very rigorous timekeeping, but with your signage, I think we will be able to do it. So let me go straight into it. We're trying to respond to maybe 3 questions in this session together with this distinguished panel. First of all, how has the military takeover, this is the term that we use in IOM, in Myanmar in February 2021 affected the human and labor rights conditions of Myanmar migrant workers in Thailand? So we're really looking at the situation of Myanmar migrants here in Thailand, not so much in the country of origin, although we'll have to consider also certain events and developments, of course, in the country of origin as well. How has it impacted labor migration and mobility between the 2 countries, which you know has been there at large scale for a long time, but of course, certain developments we have to consider. What are the implications for our collective work to ensure fair and ethical and responsible recruitment in global supply chains? How can we introduce this topic into the dialogue that we've been having at the Global Forum for Responsible Recruitment now for many years? And how does crisis really factor in these processes in our collective promotion of ethical recruitment? And then what are the lessons learned that we have here in Thailand, and can we apply them maybe also in a global context for this global forum? I'm joined, and I'm very pleased to be joined by 3 very interesting speakers. First of all, Titi Tain, who is a researcher and a research fellow now associated with the IHRB. And Titi, you are also yourself from Myanmar, so thank you very much for joining this panel. We know we will have an interactive sessions where you can ask questions to the audience, but I would like to ask you, in the case of Titi, when you put questions, that we cannot direct any direct questions to Titi, because we also have to consider certain risks that are associated with speakers from Myanmar. Then on the left, we have Samiho Dumas, who's a senior director at the Thai Union Group in the area of sustainability and social impact. So thank you very much for joining. Thai Union, I think, is well known to most of you in the audience. It's a company that is from Thailand, which is very important, and it has been going on a long journey when it comes to ensuring fair, ethical, responsible recruitment in their supply chain, especially in Thailand. And then last but not least, we have Mr. Saxon Roy Pirom, who is the director and founder of the Sati Foundation, a social enterprise based here in Bangkok, who's doing some very interesting work. I'll let Saxon himself introduce your company and your work in a little bit. And now we hope that we have the understanding of the audience. We had a long discussion in IOM in preparation of this panel, and we have decided against having a Myanmar migrant worker directly on this panel. We know the aspect of worker voice and representation of migrants themselves here at this forum is very important, but we really also considered the risks that would be associated, especially since the session is recorded, and decided against it. We have an exhibition just outside here, and every one of you is invited to have a look during the longer extended coffee breaks that we have and go around. It's an exhibition that was done by our media and communications team. We sent them up to Chiang Mai and go into the migrant communities, and I think it's a very interesting compilation of migrants, migrant workers themselves, but also community actors who are in Chiang Mai, which has also seen an increase in arrivals of Myanmar migrants, and all working together to really support the migrant communities there. So that's one, and then in the middle of this panel, we will present some of the findings of a rapid assessment that we've done at IOM. We've also sent out our migration data and research team to 2 provinces bordering Myanmar, and we collected sort of the views and voices of 500 women and men migrant workers in Ranong and Tak province. And we really wanted to ask the migrants themselves about what they see currently as the key challenges that they experience. And what would they say are the solutions? So we have some sort of worker voice and migrant voice represented in this panel as well. And I will have the job to run you through very quickly to what we think is a very rich set of findings. So we hope this is okay. And we think we have found a good solution to really also bring in the migrant worker voice. I will provide a little bit of context at the beginning before we finally turn to the audience. So as many of you know, Thailand has long been a key destination country for migrant workers in Southeast Asia. The Myanmar-Thailand migration corridor remains one of the largest within the Asia region, and I think it's within the top 20 globally in terms of global migration corridors. So very important migration corridor for the work of IOM, and I believe for all of us. Now, in February 2021, this is when COVID was still around, and this is when the military takeover took place in Myanmar, and of course triggered a lot of developments also on the migration of the Myanmar population. Subsequent clashes have led to the displacement of an estimated 3.5 million people within Myanmar as of March 25. The crisis has deeply affected people's everyday lives in Myanmar. Many public services like schools, hospitals are no longer really available or have become inaccessible. What we see is a multidimensional crisis in Myanmar, especially affecting its people. Now, how has this affected migration to Thailand? Since the military takeover in February 2021, IOM Thailand has been closely monitoring cross-border movements between the 2 countries. We know there's labor migration, but there are also other types of mobility, sometimes very short-term, sometimes for accessing hospitals and medical services, families crossing, coming back. So it's quite a complex situation at those borders. What we can say is that this all has led to a sharp increase of cross-border mobility between the 2 countries. And we again saw a spike last year in 2024 following intensified clashes, especially in border regions. And we've also seen an increasing number of arrivals of Myanmar migrants following the new conscription law in 2024. So we see these developments directly affect the mobility of people. Majority is still coming, of course, for the purpose of finding work and employment. We see that migration patterns are evolving, that sometimes very important border checkpoints, border crossings are closing, and then we see the arrivals coming through new provinces in Thailand. So there's also regions in Thailand who historically haven't been dealing so much with migration and now have to really address a large-scale arrival of Myanmar migrants at times. Just a word on the overall figures. We have an estimated 4.2 million Myanmar migrant workers right now in Thailand. IOM estimates that within this 4.2 million, we have 1.8 million migrants without regular status or undocumented migrant workers. So 1.8 million undocumented out of 4.2. In addition, of course, we also have 500,000 more or less Cambodian migrant workers and 250,000 more or less migrant workers from the Lao PDR. Now, very important, and this is the final fact I want to describe, is that all of this, and we include COVID-19, but also the situation now in Myanmar has changed to the migration pathways to Thailand. Cross-border recruitment, this is mostly the recruitment of recruitment agencies in the country of origin that we've been talked about in this forum, has almost come to a standstill. In fact, earlier this year, the authorities in Myanmar have suspended cross-border recruitment. And we now see that, particularly for the Myanmar population, 88% of these 4.2 million Myanmar migrants are being recruited and provided with employment when they are already in Thailand. So this is very important, and I think very important also for us to discuss is what are the implications of this. There's migrant workers with irregular status who then obtain documentation and employment. And there's also a large group of migrant workers from Myanmar who continue to extend their stay, change employers much more frequently. And of course, we see new challenges, new risk areas also being associated with this in-country registration and in-country recruitment process. Okay, with this context, I would like to hand it over to TT. And maybe the first question for you is, how are these developments that I tried to describe impacting really the Myanmar migrants? And how are the measures and developments that have been taking place in Myanmar affect the migrants and the migrant workers from Myanmar?
Thank you, Max. In fact, migration has always been a lifeline for people of Myanmar. And for decades, many have left the country to support their families through remittances, especially in terms of political and economic crises. And now, more than 4 years after the military takeover, we're also seeing more difficult situations in the country with continued conflict, as well as political instability and worsening economy. And as mentioned earlier on, more recent years with the fear of conscription. And of course, what this does is that it pushes people from Myanmar for their safety and for better opportunities to leave the country in search of better opportunities abroad. And for this reason, many come to Thailand. Unfortunately, again, as Max has mentioned, the formal migration channel is now nearly impossible. So people are turning to irregular migration channels. And to do so, they take on interest loans with high interest rates. And also, they have to turn now to unlicensed brokers. And sadly, many of these brokers also take advantage of the desperate situation of workers in the country, and also charging high fees, as well as giving false promises, and along the way, sometimes also abandoning them. And but when migrant workers do arrive to Thailand, they also face different sets of challenges additional. And as you've mentioned, there are currently around 4.2 million Myanmar migrant workers in Thailand, and 1.8 are million are undocumented. So these people in particular face the risk of exploitation. And of course, if you're undocumented, then it's impossible and very difficult for you to report, make complaints about the exploitations that you're experiencing, wage theft, etc. And because now, and in addition to that, especially for undocumented workers, there's always this constant fear of arrest and deportation. And but again, right now there are more than 4 million Myanmar migrant workers in Thailand, which means that these people, many of them are unemployed and also actively seeking jobs. And again, to do so, many are also turning to brokers here in Thailand as well, and also paying high fees. But at the end, that doesn't mean they are guaranteed jobs, and many will end up continue to be unemployed or being in poorly paid jobs in very poor working conditions as well. And of course, all of these not only impact on their income and also on their workplace conditions, but it also has a great toll on their mental health. And we're also being reported, there's also reports that Myanmar migrant workers are experiencing stress, anxiety, and also depression. Of course, this is further worsened by the living conditions as well as also limited access to healthcare services and social support. I think I'll...
Thank you, Titi. Quick follow-up question maybe for you. Less than 2 months ago, we also had a very strong earthquake in Myanmar, coming on top of the crisis that we have there already. An earthquake that we also felt quite strongly here in Bangkok. What can you say perhaps how the effects of this earthquake also come on top of the vulnerabilities that you've described?
Unfortunately, Myanmar is prone to natural disasters, cyclones, as well as landslides and floods and also earthquakes. And as you said, the recent earthquake has severely devastated the country. It has affected severely 70 million people in the country, which is about 1/3 of the population. And not only that, it has impacted and hit across 6 different states and regions, including Sagaing, which has the highest population of ITPs in Myanmar, with around 1.7 million ITPs in Sagaing region alone. And there has been reports of more than 3,800 people dying and more than deaths, and also more than 5,000 people injured. But in addition to human fatalities and also having homes destroyed, it also has a deep and severe impact on people's livelihoods and also economic activity. For example, because of the earthquake, in the garment sector alone, it has impacted the livelihoods of around 100,000 garment workers due to factory closures, factories being destroyed, and also home-based productions having to stop. And what we've seen in the past again and again is that whenever there are such emergencies, people again turn to migration as a form of solution. And there's also, because in these urgencies, there's also this sense of having to leave quickly to support your families in this dire situation. And we can expect that there will be more people from earthquake-hit areas going abroad through irregular migration channels, and many will be coming to Thailand. And these will include women as well as and as well as families as well.
Thank you very much, Titi. I'll move on now to Sami and Thai Union. And the question for you is, how are these developments experienced by Thai Union? What do they mean for your responsible recruitment policies and protocol and procedures, and how has it changed the approach of your company?
So we actually haven't hired new recruits through the MOU official channel for some time. It's drastically reduced. And consequently, we have only hired in-country walk-in within Thailand. So because the kind of external environment is very dynamic, it's evolving, so we take a very cautious and compliant approach. We only hire documented workers who process all the legal document. And I think the external environment will continue to be dynamic. And then we think the best thing we can do as a company is to stick to measures that we find to be effective. And I think I will highlight 3 of them. The first one is for MOU recruitment. What we found helpful and effective. So we have appointed 2 recruiting agents. We hire through them exclusively. And both of these recruitment agents, they are certified by underlevel through the Fair Hiring Initiative. And it allows us to do 2 things that are very important. Because we have a established business relationship, so we actually able to have oversight of their recruitment process. That's the first one. And then second one, we actually pay all the recruitment fee directly to the recruiting agents. So the worker do not have to pay upfront. So we go directly to the source and start from the first mile of the recruitment. And then the second thing that are equally important. So we partner with MWRN and LRF. These are civil society partner. They have the expertise and understanding of the migrant worker. So we bring them as part of the due diligence process. So they help us to train workers, and they also help us to interview the applicant to understand if they still exposed to like recruitment fee or any deceptive measures. And then the last thing that I think there are a lot of interest. It has talked about yesterday. So our migrant worker have proportionate representation in all our own facility. So it actually, we use it as a platform for hear their worker voice, and also is where this group of welfare committee, we turn to them for social dialogue. We get them feedback, and when we hear any grievances, whether we get them internally or externally, this is a group of people that we turn to for investigation, advice, for engagement. So I think we will have to continue to stick to what works, in terms of in times of crisis.
Thank you very much, Samuel. And what can you tell us then also in terms of these new challenges? I think it's very interesting that Thai Union has worked on an ethical recruitment process and systems for a long time now. And all of this is geared towards the cross-border recruitment with certified recruitment agencies, a lot of processes in terms of translating, signing the contracts, making sure the orientations, partnerships with civil society. And now you're facing a reality where this process is no longer available because of the situation. So you have to find your migrant workers already in Thailand. And then, of course, often the documentation situation is very complex. It's not always possible at the moment to obtain identity documents from the Myanmar consular services, et cetera, et cetera. So you really had to change again your practices. And now, of course, probably you're waiting for also the cross-border recruitment to open up again, but it's impossible to say right now when and if that would happen. How does this all affect Thai Union in terms of your customer relationships and the requirements and social standards that your buyers have for Thai Union?
Yeah, so I think we'll talk about two different buckets. So one bucket is our own employees at our processing plant. Another one is actually fisher with the vessel that we do not own. And I think with our own employees, I would really advocate for retailers and buyers here, turn to pre-competitive research. There are a lot of work, like I think yesterday, Verite Impact talked about the recruitment fee mapping exercise. Turn to the resources, because all these mapping exercise, no individual company can do that alone. And I think it has to be done at scale and have sufficient sample size. So if there are any migration corridor that these information does not exist today, I would definitely advocate you to kind of fund those research and turn to those information for reference. And then I use the word reference. It's very important. I also want to highlight these are all pre-competitive information. Why it's important? Because Thai Union have a direct relationship with our recruiting agents. So we have knowledge of those fees because we pay them directly. While you're not in a position to really pay those directly, those are kind of like secondhand information. At times, it's really difficult to verify. Particularly, we all understand the first mile, particularly recruitment, is very informal. Those fees are not documented. So I think try to have a collaborative approach. And I also wanted to highlight that sometimes knowing the fee is important, but I think I wanted to highlight why we want to know that is because there's a real need for us to discuss there's a cost to be shared. And then I think another very important challenge, despite all the effort that we have continued to do, we find them effective, we still find worker pay fee. Even though we have been very vocal about what we do, we think as a company, we advertise this is the right thing to do. But I think all of us in the room, retailers, brands, and businesses need to walk the talk. It really need to show up and so that the worker believe that there is a real change. The problem is when they don't believe it, there is a real change, they don't have the awareness, they are very vulnerable to misinformation. So we do find workers pay some fee. They are not recruitment fee. They are just victim of deceptive practices that exist in this ecosystem. And I wanted to also talk about the second bucket, which is the fisher who work on vessels. I think this is entirely different environment because they are not our workers. So it's very challenging for us to manage it directly. And I wanted to highlight yesterday, the Seafarer organization also highlight typically workers on the vessel, they work 10 to 11 months. So the employment relationship is highly transactional. There is much less interest compared to where I'm coming from, an apparel industry. Employer has an interest to invest in skill building, reducing turnover. That kind of incentive doesn't seem to apply for this segment of workforce. So, and then apart from all these dynamics, I also want to highlight is much more prioritize need for addressing the elephant in the room, which is who will absorb the cost. I think those costs highly likely to be more significant than the corridor, all those workforce that travel to factory. There are a lot of interest and much more invested resources to understand that problem. But I think it's much less well understood when it comes to migrant fisher. And all those fees, many of them are legitimate fee paid to government for a passport and things like that. I think instead of going to the path to do research, and I think I would just advocate for having a real discussion how to address and share this cost.
Thank you so much, Sammy. Bring up the topic of shared responsibility once again and encouraging a discussion also with the international buyers. We'll move on now to Sachs, and Neil in a minute will use the slides for the presentation of our findings. I can't see any of the clippers. Will the team help me with changing the slides? Maybe. Oh, yeah, perfect. Thank you. All right, Sachs, very pleased to have you on the panel. I think you're representing kind of a new actor in this well-established global forum. I'd like to call it a social enterprise, a foundation. I'll let you introduce and describe your company, and then maybe also once you do that, can you describe what challenges you see and in the life of the Myanmar migrants that you deal with, and sort of how you try to help them and address some of these challenges with your work?
Sure. Hello. Okay. First, I wanted to start off saying I'm Thai, but I'm not really Thai. I'm about 75% Thai, 25% Chinese, which is most people in Thailand. Actually, I'm one of the more Thais. You know, because and people say that too. I look very Thai too. That's what people say. Anyways, some of the richest families in Thailand, businesses are Thai. Chang, the water on your table. Actually, they sell beer mostly. Chinese. CP, Thai Chinese. Central, Thai Chinese. So Thailand is a country made of migrant workers, rich migrants. You know. So I studied in the U.S. I studied with Chinese Americans. Indian Americans. I went to medical school with a lot of Indian Americans, all migrants. Yeah, so I kind of get confused when we talk about migrant workers because I feel like everybody is a migrant worker. So how we kind of fight over it, it actually really confuses me. So today I'm not going to talk so much about the NGO side. I'm going to talk more about a business I started about 1.5 years ago. I like to call it a socially conscious business because I think that businesses should lead with people. It actually is. It's called ISA Solutions. So it's developed from two parts of my work. One is the social sector side that I've been doing for over 10 years, mostly working with youths, Thai youths, migrant youths, refugee youths. The other part is businesses that I run in Thailand. I run mostly F&B restaurants in Thailand. And so the business ISA Solutions I started about almost 1.5 years ago. It was basically to solve my own problems first. So basically to start on migrant side is A lot of migrant workers that I've met have been, the first issue that I see is just the paperwork. It's very complicated. There's employment transfers, there's CI passports, there's pink slips. I'm still quite confused about it every day. But imagine coming from another country, speaking another language, and wanting to just have a better life and have a job, and having to fill out these forms. So on the company side, we call it a community-based tech company. So we use a lot of technology, not AI, but technology, to help organize all this. First, we start with the compliance side. So first, we do not charge anything on the migrant side. We accept government fees that need to be paid, but there's no charge on the migrant side, and we help automate compliance. So filling out forms, taking pictures of their passport, everything can be automated, so their forms can be completely completed. So then that can be handed in easily without having gone through intermediates. It's very complicated. Even the color of if you're an expat here, even when you go to apply for an expat visa, the pen has to be a certain color, it has to be blue, by the way. If it's not, you're going to get sent back. You're going to have to fill it all out again. We do compliance as far as matching skills. So languages you speak, there's actually, because of the current situation in Myanmar, a lot of English-speaking Burmese are coming over. Very, very good English, very well educated, but they don't speak Thai. But in order, and actually compared to typical Thais, actually, you've probably seen on the news, Thailand has one of the lowest English-speaking educations in the world, especially in Southeast Asia. So a lot of the Burmese workers are actually much better English speakers than Thais. So how do we vet this? We automate this, and we create let's say a platform, right? So through this platform, the next thing, the problem we see is skill level. So there's different levels of skill, language, just past jobs. Some have only worked farming, some have only worked in factories, some have worked on boats, some have worked in markets. So in order to categorize these skills. So imagine what agencies do now is all manual. That's why I started, because manual work is, that's a lot of people to actually fill out forms for, and it's a lot of communication. So we already have over 12,000 people in our pool, Burmese migrant workers, and we have over 200 a day that come on. We use different platforms. We use TikTok, we use Facebook, all automated. We use bots actually to get everybody's information and actually get them into the system. And then we have a community-based team that does support. So a team of Burmese people who do community support. We do skill vetting. We do language support. We do upskilling. So we do a lot of some things from like applying to a job. I like to tell this story. When we first started, so we're mostly in hospitality. So we set up interviews for hospitality jobs, and people were coming in their flip-flops to interview. So for me, it's quite odd. But the more I talk to the people, they're like, well, these are shoes. Like it's just it's not just language, it's culture, right? So we started running TikTok videos out to the community. How to apply for a job? How do you dress? So we have like typical white shirt, black pants. We have in-house training, and then we have online training, and we have different organizations we work with. And the last one is the problem I see is a community. So anywhere you go in the world, you'll see there's migrant communities, right? So if you go to everywhere in the world, there's a Chinatown, there's an India town, because people need community. So we're trying to build that community for people to feel supported and see that they can have that ladder. That was on the I'll give a quick problem on the other side. On the other side, it's more as a business owner. Thailand it's a tourism country, right? So what does that mean? Restaurants and hotels. Everybody wants to come eat here. It's a huge sector, but it's a sector with huge issues as far as employment. When I first started my restaurants over 10 years ago, my staff was probably 90% Thai, 10% Burmese. Now all my restaurants and staff is about 95% Burmese and 5% Thai and some other nationalities. As a business owner, three main issues. One is staff staying with me. All right, so usually they'll come apply for a restaurant, they'll work. Sometimes Thais will work a couple months and then they'll leave. They have to start again. The second one is skill set. I was saying before, English, and the third is just people who want to work. I hate to say that, but yeah. So it was a natural matchup. So these two things, the migrant workers, they work with us, and I've seen through my work is they want a stable job. They're not trying to. In Thai culture, it's quite common to jump from job to job now. It's like, one day you're an influencer, the next day you're a designer. It's like it's very part of the culture now. So most migrant workers that I met, they're just looking for a new home. They're looking for stability. So hospitality sector, we want people stay with us for a long time. Loyalty, hard workers. It's not an easy job, because it's hospitality sector. Some people open quite late, bars, restaurants, staff. So it was only and then the third issue is just when I want to hire Burmese, the paperwork. I have a police officer coming to me every month, and they actually come and check. Okay, who's legal, who's not. They don't really care. They just want some money. But it's just like, who's legal, who's not. So they'll say if they're not legal, then there's fines, obviously, and large companies have to go through this a lot. So that's why we actually, it's been quite. Within a year and a half, we placed over 500 migrant workers in 300 different partners, restaurants, hotels, and we're growing very fast because it's a need and it's a global need. Yeah. I had a second question. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Maybe I'll stop you right there, Sax. I think this is very, very good to hear. And the reason actually why we wanted to have you on the panel is because your solution, your enterprise, is a direct response to the change in migration patterns that we see, right? Because what you offer is a sort of a solution, a job matching service for migrant workers who are already in the country. And this is exactly what we need right now in Thailand. And one more aspect that I think I hear from you, which is very, very encouraging, is that by bringing workers into the food and beverage hospitality sector, we also see an opportunity to move upward in terms of career, because these sectors, these nice restaurants in Bangkok sometimes pay well above the minimum wage for migrant workers. So that's also a good and important part of the solution that you provide. I can already see for the second round of questions, the panelists will have to be a little bit shorter, and then we also have to accommodate the question. We're already starting to run out of time. I'll go now quickly into the presentation of the findings of the IOM rapid assessment in the communities. If I can have the slides, please. Okay, so we have done a rapid assessment during 3 weeks in April in 2 provinces, bordering provinces with Myanmar, Tak and Ranong, both provinces that are heavily impacted by the constant changes in migration patterns and arrival of Myanmar migrant workers. We've spoken to 530 around migrant workers in the manufacturing, food processing, construction, agriculture, and fishing sector. The objective that we had was to really hear from the migrants. What are the key challenges that you identify for yourselves, and what are the solutions that you propose? So just a little bit of background and demographic profile. 536 migrant workers in 2 provinces, 51% women, 70%, not surprising, between 26 and 45. 45 is the maximum legal age you can be as a migrant worker in Thailand. So a good part also under 26. Now, very important, 63% now live in Thailand with partner and or children. So this is very unique in Thailand, because most of the temporary destinations for migrant workers in the Gulf, in Malaysia, in East Asia do not allow for families to come. You're only allowed to come as a worker. But because of the history of migration and the sharing of the green border between the countries, we see a very high proportion of migrant families. And this has only increased quite drastically since the military takeover. 13% of the respondents in irregular situations. In agriculture, we see this proportion be quite a bit higher. 35% of that sample arrived after the coup. So we see a lot of long-term I was almost going to say residents, but stayers here in Thailand. A lot of support networks that we know that these migrant workers have. And the more recent arrivals, of course, are much more vulnerable. But of course, also the longer term staying ones have now problems in terms of returning and going back home. So very important consideration as well. The reasons for migrating: lack of employment, but also fear of conscription in Myanmar, 19%, and escaping from war or violence in their area and township, 17%. Now let's look at the challenges, top 3 challenges. And I think this is quite important also to understand. 33% mention the difficulty to get or renew documentation to live and work in Thailand. So the biggest problems, as migrant workers report them, link to what we've just discussed, the fact that they're already in Thailand and that it is very, very important for them to have a legal right to stay and work, and also have this ability to stay longer, there's definitely a fear of returning back home. I think we all can understand that. And there are many ways of actually losing your status if you have it, and it's very difficult to obtain status if you don't have it. And 24% talk about insufficient income first, and then to cover basic needs. We know that living expenses, costs are increasing also in Thailand due to inflation and other types of crisis. And then also linked to that, we see the problem of financial debt, of course, which we knew. And then 14% talk about the difficulty to find stable and long-term employment. Now let's go quickly through these challenges. The difficulty to get or renew documentation, and Sachs already spoke about this. There's limited oversight over this process at the moment in Thailand. The fees and costs associated with documentation is not so clear. It's very complex to navigate through this process. And then, of course, there's the fear of approaching Myanmar authorities. You also need to obtain identity documents and other certifications. And now linking to the description, often this is a huge risk for Myanmar migrants to come forward. And then, of course, you're being pushed into irregularity. And then, of course, linked to the process, challenges in accessibility. Many of the requirements are not being translated into languages, not even clear where to get the information. The cost, the average cost or median cost associated with the in-country registration process is around 11,000 Thai baht or $330. It can go up to almost $900. About insufficient income, 50% of the respondents make between $340 and $450, but 45%, and we see this to be much more common in the bordering provinces as compared to further inland in Thailand. 45% earn below minimum wage. Half of the workers in agriculture earn below minimum wage. 39% are piece rate workers. 54 out of this working in agriculture, and 56% of the piece rate workers earn below the minimum wage. So very severe and significant findings. 66% reported having debt. The median amount is $480, and 30% reported a debt interest rate of between 10 and 20%. What we know from other IOM data is that the sources, the root causes of debt are mainly at the moment food, housing, access to education, and often only then we hear about recruitment fees and migration costs. So again, it's really the expenses. Think about the presence of families here in Thailand. Life in Thailand is much more expensive compared to Myanmar. So this is really at the moment what puts the pressure on the Myanmar population. Challenge number 3, the challenge and difficulty to find stable employment. 2% of the Myanmar migrants work 7 days per week. So this is against the Thai labor law. 30% work more than 10 hours per day. 11% record unpaid overtime, including 15% among men, so slightly higher here for men. And almost half of the migrants report that they receive no social benefit at all linked to their work. 17% in regular situations do not have health insurance. And again, we see the agriculture sector coming in much higher here at the moment. So agricultural work often still considered informal work here in Thailand, a sector that we should probably give more attention to as well. Okay, so I'll run quickly through a lot of findings. We come back to the solutions in a moment, and I'll go into the second round of questions with the panelists. Perhaps, Sachs, we can continue with you. We'll make the second round now about lessons learned and key takeaways, and I'll ask you to be very quick so we retain a few minutes for questions. So, Sachs, what are your key takeaways and lessons learned?
Mostly, I'm going to reiterate the paperwork part. So making that as smooth and compliant as easiest. Second one is language and upskilling. So having a proper process to give people opportunity to upskill. The reason why it's hospitality that I chose is because the barrier entry is very low. So you can start with as a dishwasher with very little skill and language skill, and you will get minimum wage in Thailand. So another part of what we do is the vetting of the business side. So it's automated, so they have to follow the Thai rules of social security, healthcare, and everything. So I would say, and community, which are our community. So as a migrant worker that needs to get support with the paperwork process, the system. Second is upskilling in language, and 3 is equal pay and opportunity. And the final problem that is probably the biggest problem is government bottleneck. So ultimately, all of this can be constrained by government policies. Currently, an issue I'm dealing with is changing employment, because traditionally you can change employment. If you're a Burmese worker, you want to change from one job to another. There's a form you fill out from both sides, and the government signs off, and it's done. Right now, the Burmese government is having to sign off as well. They're asking to sign off as well, and they're refusing to sign. So that's causing a huge lag in employment transfers right now. It's been like 2 months now, but it's supposed to be getting better soon. So those are probably key takeaways. Yeah.
Thank you. And again, exemplifies quite a bit why the renewing, obtaining documentation is one of the key challenges right now, because at the moment it's made much harder also by the Myanmar authorities to have access to legal status. Okay, coming to Thai Union, what are your key lessons learned? What are your key takeaways?
So despite MOU recruitment is reduced, we continue to support our NGO partners because they are very essential in our oversight process. So we want to make sure that they have financial sustainability and operational readiness once the MOU channel reopen. And also, of course, lastly, want to highlight, like referring to your deck, there are a lot of livelihood challenges for the migrant workers. So all the civil society partner continue to need the support because the migrant worker need their legal advice and all kinds of support more than ever. Yeah.
Thank you, Sammy. I'm very pleased to hear that despite your NGO and civil society partners who operate also in Myanmar, not really able to do much work because there is no recruitment in Myanmar at the moment, the Thai Union indeed maintains this relationship and keeps supporting your civil society partners, because there will be a moment when you probably need them again. They can also support you with work maybe in Thailand. So I think this is a great example of Thai Union in terms of really being sustainable also when it comes to the partnerships that you have created. So thanks a lot for that. Titi, the question for you also about lessons learned, key takeaways, but also recommendations and tips that you see for the way forward so that we can all help and continue improving the situation of Myanmar migrants in Thailand.
So maybe I'll discuss that in 2 points, pre-departure and in Thailand. And so in Myanmar, there are initiatives and also joint collaborations between different organizations, down to the level of community-based organizations that are providing safe migration trainings, pre-departure trainings, as well as vocational training, as language classes, and also women's shelter for female workers who are preparing to go abroad. There's also organizations that are assisting workers that have been scammed to recover their money from brokers, and also civil societies that are working with employment agencies offering pre-departure training as well. And there was also one employment agency that I met with that applied for a microfinance license because they wanted to provide loans to their clients, in other words, the workers, so that they can provide these loans with zero interest. So these are the kind of initiatives that we have inside the country, but it is becoming more and more difficult to implement these on the ground. There's also a question of funding, and I think that's one area that's also very important. And on this side of the border, there's also many initiatives. We've heard about some great initiatives yesterday as well. But I would say that moving forward, especially for global recruiters and also for companies here, again, to cite the ongoing need for human rights due diligence across the supply chain. And of course, the UNGP mentions meaningful stakeholder engagement, and also this is also what we've been hearing yesterday as well, is the need to make sure that migrant workers are involved in the process. These engagement actually listen to the voice of the workers and their concerns, and also building trust. Thank
you, Titi, and especially on the last point, from my own side, we can fully support that. We know that the human rights due diligence is an ongoing process, and it needs to respond to evolving risks and challenges. And I think we really now have shown some data. I hope, John, you will appreciate that, because we're talking about data a lot, that we can now see that these challenges for Myanmar migrants in Thailand are indeed different right now, and I think we all have an opportunity to work together collectively to respond to these new challenges. We'll open up for questions now. In 20 seconds, I just have one more slide that we can also have a look at what migrant workers themselves propose as solutions. And I think these are really quite pertinent and helpful. If we can have the slides one more time. This is a very dynamic session. Thank you so much. So, so what are the solutions that the workers have come up with? And I think they are really quite to the point. We group them according to the challenges. So in terms of obtaining, renewing, getting documentation, legal status here in Thailand, employer support. Employers can really play a key role in helping migrant workers navigate the process and obtaining relevant work documents and renew the work permit here in Thailand. Very simple, making information, particularly public information about the process, available in migrant language. Something we've been encouraging also the Royal Thai government to do. There are many stakeholders and actors involved. Actually, on the 28th of May, IOM is launching here in Thailand a policy paper on this in-country registration and recruitment process. For those who are interested and who will still be in Bangkok, please come to us and we can extend an invite to you because there's quite a few recommendations that we have worked on with different stakeholder groups. And then for the government, of course, and this is hopefully an ongoing process to really simplify and streamline the process of in-country registration. We commend the Thai government in having put through hundreds of thousands of migrant workers through this in-country registration, but there's a need to further simplify. And then in terms of income, wages, debt, and stable employment, migrant workers ask for higher wages, of course, to cover also the increasing expenses, living expenses here in Thailand, but also provide loans at lower interest rate. They can no longer be 10 and 20%, maybe through microfinance solutions. And then also in the absence of higher minimum wages and higher wages in Thailand in those sectors that we've looked at, provide migrant workers with more paid overtime opportunities, particularly at the moment right now when expenses are higher and additional pressures being placed on Myanmar migrants. Okay, let's turn to the questions.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, panelists. Thank you so much for the very good and engaging panel. We have been receiving a lot of questions, but definitely we won't be able to put all on this. So basically, I'm addressing 3 questions here for the panelists. One is, what are the general attitude of Thai people towards the migrant worker from Myanmar? And is there any instances of discrimination and xenophobia? Another one is, migrant workers are not allowed to organize under the Thai Labor Relegation Act. However, the key solution of migrant worker to especially address the problem is first to allow them to organize. So what is the Thai Union Group position on this? Will you take a more progressive role to push the law reform for the migrant workers to organize? And another one is, I think we addressed a little bit about this one in the last presentation, but if you could elaborate. Registration process for the migrant worker in Thailand has been complicated since past, especially for the migrant worker from Myanmar. They need certain documentation from the Myanmar embassy. So what do you think we can improve this situation by the companies, labor rights organization, and international group organization like ILO? So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Okay, 3 very good questions. Thank you to the audience for posing these. Maybe the first question goes to Saxon about the attitudes of the Thai hosting population towards migrants in general, but especially the migrants from Myanmar.
Okay, that's a very good question. Thailand is a very social media-led country. It's a very dynamic social media country. Like one day it'll be PM 2.5 on the news, next day it'll be about car crash. So basically, the overall sentiment actually goes up and down. That's my point. So on the business side, it's it's quite more and more well accepted because we talk to a lot of businesses. We do get comments where, I would say racist comments about, oh, we want, we want clean workers, or, we do occasionally get that, but those are the rarity now. More and more businesses are accepting. As far as the general public, usually I would say being a Buddhist country, there's not a lot of general outspoken sentiment about negative sentiment, but social media tends to be trends. You'll see these trends of if there's actually an actual theft or something specifically that happens, it's on the news, and then there'll be a spike in negativity, and then it'll drop. So, but I say the overall sentiment is quite good. It just depending on what's on the news today.
Thank you, Saxon. Perhaps you can also mention that the Royal Thai government has a commitment to implement the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly, Regular Migration. It has 4 pledges. One is on universal healthcare for migrant workers. One of the other pledges is on really improving public perceptions on migration and migrants in Thailand. So it is also on the radar of the government here. The second question, Sami, Thai Union, about tricky one maybe, about the organization of migrants in the workplace.
So I have mentioned in our own facility, we have already democratically elected migrant proportion to their kind of makeup of in the factory, because they have different dialect, even though they are of Burmese. So I think we see labor union as value add. We actually involve labor union to provide training in the past, and we will continue to do that. And also, I think labor union play a much more critical role in another bucket of our supply chain. So migrant fisher, they are not well supported by legal framework because they migrate, they fish in high sea. We see actually labor union resources play a much more kind of value-added role for the supply chain. We remain open to have multi-stakeholder dialogue with labor union. We actually have some interaction with them on a regular basis. So we are never opposed to it. We welcome it. We find like a sweet spot where we have a share and overlapping objective. And I think that's the best place to start, and we will remain in that way.
Great, thank you, Sami. And the last question was about how can we improve the in-country registration process here in Thailand? Maybe I take this one. We'll have a lot of recommendations coming out in our policy paper to be launched on 28th of May. We can share that with the audience. It goes quite into technical details because the process in itself is super complex. There's a role for employers and businesses to really formalize the process, similar to what we've done with the cross-border MOU recruitment process. There is a way of formalizing your in-country registration process. Even though migrant workers are often perceived then as walk-in, there's a lot of process beforehand in order for these migrant workers to find the way to the workplaces, the factory. So how can companies go about formalizing this and training also their HR systems for this new way of recruiting migrant workers? The second one maybe is a point of advocacy towards the government to continue streamlining the process. There are several ministries and agencies involved. We would say they should maybe come together under one roof in one-stop service centers and make the process a little bit faster and leaner and easier to understand for migrant workers. One of the biggest challenges right now is the additional step that the Myanmar authorities have imposed about obtaining identity documents that need to be, and obtaining approvals at the Myanmar embassy. Right now, a point of IOM advocacy here with the Thai government is to allow for registration of Myanmar migrant workers without that step in the process. So a bit more of a unilateral approach on side of the Thai government, also for humanitarian reasons. We see there's a lot of understanding also on the Thai side about these humanitarian needs of the Myanmar migrants right now. And we also see an interest, of course, of the Thai government and Thai society to have as much as possible a documented and regular migrant workforce in the country. So at the moment, if we want to keep that process efficient and effective, it would be important to consider that possibility as a temporary solution, hopefully. But of course, that's a big step also for the Thai government. And I think coming up to time. I'm very glad that we managed to stay within the hour. Thank you so much to the panelists for your contributions, also to the IOM team for the data collection and the exhibition. All right, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Max, and panel. That was great. Just one other side of workers from Myanmar being here in Thailand, of course, is that many companies have withdrawn from operations in Myanmar and have faced dilemmas about whether to do so or not. One company that stayed, Bestseller, and they've been releasing a regular report on the enhanced due diligence that they're undertaking on their factories in Myanmar. And it's like another side of this debate as well. And it's a really interesting report to read and a really interesting course of action that company in particular has taken. And we'd recommend you to have a look. You can find it very easily on the Bestseller website. We're now going to have a break. It's a half-hour break. Please be back in here at 11 o'clock, please. Thank you.